Hi, Rama. It's week 4, day 4 of our Bible narrative reading plan, and today we're in Genesis chapter 25, starting in verse 19 through the end of the chapter. We'll also find ourselves in Proverbs chapter 2. So as we begin here in Genesis 25, the story is shifting from Abraham to his son Isaac. We see that it recounts for us that Isaac and Rebekah are now married. They've been married almost 20 years, and Rebekah is barren. She hasn't had a child yet. And so Isaac prays to the Lord for his wife, and the Lord hears Isaac's prayer. And so she conceives, and while she's pregnant, verse 22 says that the children struggled together within her. That's an important phrase because it's foreshadowing what's going to happen for a long time through the book of Genesis, is that these children, Jacob and Esau, are going to struggle. Their descendants are going to struggle. And so she's having a very difficult pregnancy. The children are fighting within her. And so she's very surprised. This is not what she expected with pregnancy. And so she cries out to God. She prays like Isaac prayed and asks God, "Why is this happening to me?" And the Lord answered her. He said, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." As you know, this was not common. The oldest had the birthright in the family. The older did not serve the younger. The oldest son was the most important descendant in many practical ways. And so this is not what she expects from her children, and yet this is what God is telling her. This is the explanation for why the children are fighting within her womb. And so she gives birth to the children, and it says that the first one that comes out is red. All his body was like a hairy cloak. He's a hairy little baby, and he's very red, and so his name is Esau, which means red. And after Esau comes out, Isaac comes out, and he's holding on to Esau's heel. And again, this is very strange imagery. It's not what you expect with children being born. And so Jacob is holding on to his brother even as they're being delivered from their mother's womb. And he's named Jacob because it means two things. It means that he who grabs the heel, but it also means he who cheats. And so apparently during their day, there was a euphemism, a phrase, that if you grab someone by the heel, that meant that you were cheating them. And again, these names are significant because it's pointing us to what's going to happen in the future, that Jacob is going to be known as a deceiver, or as one who cheats, even as he's born holding on to the heel of his brother. And so God himself has told there's going to be differences in these children. There's going to be two nations coming from them, and we see these differences played out. They're very different in their appearance at birth. They're different in their skill set as they're growing up, and in their preferences. They're different in which parent shows affection for them. So we have a recipe for disaster here with these two children. They're very different, and we know that this is going to come back to be important in the story. And it immediately does there in the last paragraph of the chapter, because we see Jacob and Esau are older, and we see the famous story of Jacob stealing Esau's birthright, if you want to put it that way. But on the other hand, it's Esau selling his birthright, because Esau clearly does not value his birthright. He doesn't understand what God is doing through his family, and that through him being the oldest, he should be heir to these things. He should be a key player in the part of God's story, and yet this is not what seems to be happening here with Jacob and Esau. Esau doesn't value his birthright, and so he's willing to sell it to Jacob, even for just a bowl of soup, because he's dramatically so hungry. He acts as if he's about to die, and so he's concerned that why should I have this birthright if I'm going to die anyway? And so we see in the last phrase of the chapter, it says, "Thus Esau despised his birthright." He didn't value it. He did not care about what God was doing. The New Testament refers to Esau as being unholy. He did not care about the things of God. This brings us to Proverbs chapter 2. Proverbs chapter 2 emphasizes the importance of gaining wisdom, of seeking out wisdom, of enveloping your life in God's wisdom. If you do this, this protects you from a lot of sin, as the passage describes, and it helps you to walk in the way of godliness. This is not what manifested itself in Esau's life. Esau did not embrace wisdom. He did not embrace God's plan. And so the question for us is, do we embrace wisdom in our life? Are we seeking after God's wisdom with the urgency that God's word seems to emphasize? Here's a summary of today's reading. For more information, go to tunemyheart.org.